Dick Axelrod, building leaders' capacity for organizational change.
How many of you would like more support from those above you? How many of you would like more support from those below you? How many want more support from other departments? So we all need a little more support in what we're doing. Think back into the history of our country. There was something called barn raising. And in barn raising, what did people do? They recognized a need in the community to help their neighbor raise the barn. People came together. There were people to do the heavy lifting. There were people to do the cutting. There were people to do the sawing. There were even people there to provide food and support. So what the community did was come together to do what none of them could do alone. And you only have to look at what goes on in emergencies today in America to know that that same energy is ready for us to be tapped. But unfortunately, in our organizations, when we go about trying to tap that energy, sometimes the way we go about doing change actually creates gaps between the people who are about to bring about the change and those in the organization. So even with the best of intentions, sometimes what we do is we work against that energy and create resistance when what we're really trying to do is create buy-in into the organization.
Dick Axelrod leads organizational barn raising. He shows leaders how to bring people together to get done what none of them could do alone. In speeches to companies all over the country, he demonstrates proven strategies for effective organizational change.
Well, most organizations handle change by essentially having the leadership provide an answer, provide a solution to the organization, and then they expect people to then essentially try to get buy-in. So what really happens is the leadership says, here's the direction we're going, here's what needs to be done, here's the solution that needs to be implemented, and we expect you to sort of buy into this thing that's already been decided. What democracy really is, it's a mindset. It's a mindset about sharing information, about involving people in decision-making. It's a mindset about a sense of equity and fairness and providing people with freedom and autonomy. That's what democracy is about. And voting is just a symbol of that. But it's these things of information sharing, involving people in decision-making, a sense of equity and fairness, providing people with freedom and autonomy. That's what democracy is about. The other thing that democracy does for you, and this is often not thought about, but democracy is your fail-safe mechanism for change. Because what happens in democracies is people know they can object to what's going on.
An international expert on organizational change, Dick Axelrod frequently shares his strategies with the media, journals, and trade magazines, helping business leaders everywhere engage in organizational barn raising. Through his best-selling book, Terms of Engagement, he aims to change the way we change organizations. His latest book takes on pragmatic involvement, showing how to get big things done by including others.
By democratic, we mean a mindset. It's not about voting, but what it is about is sharing information, involving people in decision-making, making sure that people have the freedom and autonomy to act, making sure that people have a voice. You know, if I feel like my voice counts, then I'm going to get involved. Engagement gaps always exist. Okay, so I want to remind you of that. Whenever you're doing a change process, they always exist. So if your goal is to make them go away, forget about it. Okay, it'll never happen. Now you can widen it, okay, by some things you do to sort of distance people from the change process, or you can bring it closer together and minimize it by engaging people in the change process. The engagement principles that I talked to you about are the most practical tool that I can give you. Okay, why is that? Because we don't have enough tools. Okay? There are too many situations out there. There are too many things that are different. And particularly when you think about the tri-sector thing that we're talking about here, there's not a one-size-fits-all. Okay? But if you stay principle-based, that's going to keep you going when the conditions change, when it doesn't look exactly like something we might have talked about here. If you understand the principles, then you can make it work. The idea of including people is not a new idea. Okay? So why do we include people? What's the benefit of involving others? Yeah?
If they're not included, they're not going to buy into the
Right,
process.
so it's about buy-in, right? Right. Other reasons?
Unique perspectives.
Unique perspectives, okay. All right. The first answer is why most people involve people, to get buy-in. Okay. We need support, we need buy-in, so we're going to involve others. You know, it's the old saying, people support what they help to create. But I'll say to you that if that's the only reason you're involving people, you're only getting half the benefit. Because the thing that Charles just said is the other really important thing. Because when you involve people, you get innovation, you get better ideas, and the other thing that happens is learning occurs. When you have people from different departments, that's how we get this, you know, learning about how all the jobs go. You bring in someone who thinks differently, you get a different perspective on the situations. People don't go about planning to have failure in their change processes. So what you see happening, despite the best of intentions, is things go wrong. And I think it really goes back to, one, not involving enough people, and also not involving people in a significant way. So what you see in a lot of organizations are small groups off planning for a change. While they're planning this change, the rest of the organization is wondering, what are these folks dreaming up for us? And they can't communicate very well, or despite what they're trying to do, they rarely communicate effectively. So there's not good communication going back and forth between the groups that are planning the change and those who are going to be impacted by it. And so rumors start, and before the change process is even out into the organization, people have already built up a lot of resistance because they're worried about what's going to happen to them.
Dick Axelrod's consultancy, the Axelrod Group, has helped small and large companies and organizations embrace change. Through the conference model, Dick provides a vehicle for people to have a voice in creating lasting, memorable results.
Thomas Friedman, in his book Lexus and the Olive Tree, talks about the introduction of technology into countries, especially countries like Russia. And he said, one of the reasons it doesn't work over there is they don't have a history of people objecting when things aren't right. So they put in a new IT system and people just do it. Okay? They put in new work systems and people just do it. They do exactly as they're told. All you have to do as people who are trying to bring about change is listen to those objections. You listen to those objections, you've got the keys to success.
Dick Axelrod, building leaders' capacity for organizational change. For more information on Dick Axelrod, contact the provider of this video.